I'm a 20-year-old male. This happened about 3 years ago, back when I was still a student at the university in my hometown. It was a Thursday night, and I just finished studying for finals coming up the next week. I hadn't kept up with groceries, so I tried ordering through the Walmart app. I installed it, made an account, and started adding things I needed, but the app kept freezing and crashing. Every time it crashed, the cart emptied, and I had to start over. After 20 minutes of fighting with it, I gave up and decided to make a quick run to the Walmart Supercenter about 8 minutes away. I checked the store hours. There was 1 hour left before closing. I threw on a light sweater, grabbed my keys, and headed out. When I walked inside, the store had that late-night feeling big retail places get. The overhead lights were bright but uneven, with some aisles lit softer than others. A few flickered faintly, like they were warming up even though the day was almost over. The tile floor was clean but worn down in long streaks from cartwheels. The place was quiet, except for the distant hum of a floor buffer being used somewhere in the back. An older woman was paying at a register near the entrance. 2 employees were scanning inventory with handheld devices in one of the center aisles. Another employee stood at the front register, leaning on the counter with her arms crossed. Aside from them, the only person I saw was a man standing by the magazine rack near the doors. He was holding a magazine, but his eyes lifted the moment I walked in. He didn't look away right away. His stare held for a couple of seconds, long enough to register as unusual, but not long enough for me to say anything. I headed toward the produce section. I started checking tomatoes, looking for ones that weren't bruised or soft. I didn't hear anyone walk up behind me. The first sign someone was there was a light tap on my shoulder. I turned around and saw the same man from the entrance standing directly behind me. He looked like he was in his 30s. He was well-built and wore a dark gray sweater and khaki pants. His wavy hair rested just past his ears. His complexion was fair, and his eyes were an unnaturally bright shade of blue. He held my phone out toward me and told me I'd dropped it. I hadn't noticed anything fall. I took it from him and thanked him. He didn't walk away. "What's your name?" he asked. "Calvin," I said. He nodded, studying my face carefully. Then he asked what I did for work. I told him I worked part-time at Starbucks and was in school. "Are you seeing anyone?" he asked next. "No," I said. He grinned at that, slow and deliberate, like he'd been hoping for that answer. I stepped to the side to grab a few more tomatoes, but he moved with me and ended up in front of my cart again. He asked if I lived close by, asked if I stayed alone, asked if I ever spent time with men a little older. "I really need to get home," I said. He didn't back up. "Give me your number," he said. "No," I told him. He didn't react. He just stood there like he was waiting for me to change my mind. I pulled out my phone and pretended I was answering a call from my mom. I apologized and turned my cart around, leaving the produce section and heading toward bakery. When I looked back, he was still standing in the same place, watching me leave. I found an employee stocking bread and told him a man had approached me in produce and was making me uncomfortable. The employee asked which man I meant, but when I glanced over my shoulder to point him out, he wasn't there. I gave a description. The employee nodded and said that if I saw the man again, I should let one of them know. I continued shopping. A few aisles down, in the bread and pasta section, I reached for a box of pasta. As I turned to put it in the cart, I saw the man standing at the far end of the aisle, facing me. He wasn't pretending to shop yet. He was just standing there, watching. When he saw me looking, he bent down and grabbed something off the shelf, turning it over in his hands like he was comparing ingredients. Then he started whistling, slow and off-key. I walked out of the aisle without grabbing anything else. A few seconds later, I heard footsteps behind me. When I looked back, he was approaching, smiling, giving a small wave like he was greeting a friend. I didn't acknowledge him. I turned into the next aisle and kept walking. When I checked again, he wasn't there, but the unease stayed. I went into a new aisle and tried to focus on my list. That's when I heard the squeak of a shoe on tile and the faint beginning of that same off-key whistle. When I turned around, the aisle behind me was empty. I decided to step into the men's bathroom for a break. The bathroom was empty and cold, the overhead vent sounding louder than usual. I stayed near the sinks and listened. After about half a minute, I heard the whistling again, soft, echoing faintly through the bathroom door. It got closer, then it stopped directly outside the door. I stood still, not wanting to open it. The whistling stayed there for a few seconds, then slowly drifted away. I waited a little longer. When I didn't hear anything else, I finally pushed the door open. He was standing in the middle of the aisle across from the restroom. He wasn't pretending to shop this time. He was just watching me with a small smirk on his face. I turned in the opposite direction and walked quickly. I checked behind me at each intersection of the aisles. I didn't see him immediately, but every time I slowed down, I heard something. Soft steps, or the faint start of that same whistling before it stopped again. By the time I reached checkout, I just wanted to leave. I unloaded my groceries onto the conveyor belt. While I did, he stepped out from one of the aisles near the front and waved at me again. I kept my eyes forward. He went to the magazine rack near my register and pretended to flip through a magazine, glancing up every few seconds. When the cashier scanned the last item, I leaned toward her and told her quietly that a man had been following me around the store and wouldn't leave me alone. I asked if a male employee could walk me to my car. She nodded and stepped away to find someone. While she was gone, the man left the magazine rack and walked toward me. Before I could react, he put his hand on my shoulder and leaned in like he was trying to kiss me. I jerked back immediately. The cashier returned at that moment with a male employee behind her. The man turned around and walked away into the aisles like nothing had happened. I paid, grabbed my bags, and followed the male employee outside. We walked through the nearly empty parking lot to my car. I didn't see the man anywhere. I thanked the employee, got inside, and locked the doors. I didn't go back to that Walmart again, and I stopped going out late at night for groceries. I didn't know what kind of people wandered around at that hour, and I didn't want to find out again. At the time of writing this, what happened took place a few months ago to me and my 4-year-old son, Samson, at the Walmart supercenter we used to frequent. One particular incident made me rethink ever stepping foot there again. I'm a single mother. Samson's father left before he was born after cheating on me, and I've been raising him alone ever since. We rent a small one-story house close enough to Walmart that the trip normally takes less than 5 minutes. I work full-time from home as an online tutor for grade school kids. It pays the bills and lets me stay home with Samson, which is what matters most to me. That afternoon, Samson was sitting on the couch watching Paw Patrol on his tablet. It's his favorite show, and usually getting him away from a screen is like pulling teeth. But when I told him we were going to Walmart to get the Power Rangers action figure he'd been begging for, he tossed the tablet aside without hesitation and practically jumped into his shoes. I needed a few things too: tampons, shampoo, the usual. It was supposed to be a quick, simple trip. It wasn't. When we pulled into the Walmart parking lot, the place was fuller than usual. Holiday season traffic, carts everywhere, people rushing to load their cars or squeeze through the entrance before someone else grabbed the last sale item. I saw an open parking space near the entrance and turned toward it, only for another car to zip in and take it. Samson started whining in the back seat. "When are we getting my toy?" he asked. "As soon as Mommy finds a spot," I said. "Just a minute, sweetie." It took a few loops before I finally found a space farther out. I parked, shut off the engine, and grabbed our reusable bags. Samson was already trying to get out of his car seat. I unbuckled him and carried him to the cart corral, then set him into the child seat and snapped the belt across his waist. We headed toward the entrance. That's when I first saw her. A woman stood off to the right of the sliding doors, pacing back and forth in a tight line. Her clothes were worn and dirty, her hair tangled and stiff. She looked homeless or strung out, talking loudly, to nobody in particular, about the end times, the government, and how people needed to repent before it was too late. Most customers hurried past her without engaging. I would have done the same. But the moment she saw us, her shouting shifted. You need to turn to God, she yelled. The world is ending. Judgment is coming. She waved her arms, quoting random pieces of scripture out of order, voice rising higher with every sentence. Samson went stiff in the cart. I didn't say anything. I just kept walking. The automatic doors slid open, and the moment we stepped inside, her voice was swallowed by the noise of the store. For a second, I thought that would be the end of it. I was very wrong. Inside, Walmart felt like a pre-Black Friday sale. People everywhere, carts blocking aisles, kids crying, employees rushing between shelves with armfuls of stocked items. Samson tugged at my arm. Mommy, can I get my toy now? In a minute, I said. I just need to grab something first, sweetie. I pushed the cart toward the women's hygiene aisle, stopped, and stepped ahead to grab the brand of tampons I always buy. Behind me, Samson suddenly whispered urgently, Mommy. Hang on, baby, I said. Let me get this. Mommy, the lady's here. My stomach dropped. I turned my head just enough to look behind us. The woman from outside was in the aisle, walking straight toward us, face twisted with anger. You think you can walk away from me? She snapped. You think you can ignore someone who's trying to warn you? You're a bad example to your child, a sinner, a non-believer. Samson's face crumpled and he started to cry. I stepped between her and the cart. You need to back away, I said firmly. Leave us alone. I'm warning you. She didn't stop. You're raising him wrong, she hissed. You're turning him away from God. He doesn't belong with you. I grabbed the tampons and tossed them into the cart. Do not come near my son, I said. Last warning. I tried to push past her, but she lunged and grabbed my wrist. Her grip was startlingly strong. I yanked myself free, grabbed the cart, and practically ran out of the aisle. Samson was crying hard now, clutching the seat with both hands. It's okay, sweetie, I said breathlessly as I pushed the cart. Mommy's right here. I didn't slow down. I headed toward the aisle with shampoos, scanning every direction as I moved. My heart was pounding. Every face in the crowd made me flinch, expecting it to be her. Samson hiccuped as he cried. Mommy! Is she coming? No, sweetie, I said. She's gone. Mommy won't let her come near you again. I checked both ends of the shampoo aisle before entering. No sign of her. Just random shoppers going about their business. I grabbed the shampoo as fast as I could, threw it into the cart, and pushed us out. I wanted to go to the toy aisle and then get out of the store immediately. But before we reached it, I heard a voice. That same voice. Sharper, closer. I froze. Ahead of us, several feet away, I saw the woman forcing her way through a cluster of customers. People moved aside as she shoved past them, her eyes scanning until they locked onto us. I didn't think. I jerked the cart into the nearest aisle. I nearly hit two people, apologizing breathlessly as I weaved through them. But she followed. I heard her footsteps, her shouting, getting closer. You can't hide him, she yelled angrily. You can't keep him from his salvation. She entered the aisle just seconds after we did. My legs trembled. Samson grabbed the sides of the cart, crying again. It's okay, sweetie, I murmured, even though I was shaking myself. I tried to back away, but the aisle was full of people. Before I could turn, the woman ran in front of the cart and planted herself there. You can't keep that boy, she screamed. You're the Antichrist. He doesn't belong with you. I'm saving his soul. She grabbed the cart handle and yanked. I pulled back with every ounce of strength I had. For a moment, it was a tug of war. The cart jerked violently between us. Samson screamed. Then she pulled with her entire body, ripping the cart out of my hands. She dragged it toward her. Samson sobbed as the cart jolted. No, I cried. She reached for him, and something primal snapped inside me. I sprinted forward and tackled her to the ground. We hit the floor hard. I pinned her wrists down with my knees, using adrenaline I didn't know I still had. She thrashed, screamed, spat insults, and writhed like a wild animal. Somebody call security, I yelled. She tried to take my son. Samson was bawling in the cart, reaching for me. I leaned toward him, voice cracking. "It's okay, sweetie. Mommy's right here." It felt like a full minute before security arrived. "Let her go," he said, grabbing her wrists. I moved aside, shaking so hard I nearly fell. Another employee rushed in to help hold her down as she continued fighting. Together they handcuffed her. She kept screaming as they dragged her away, ranting about demons, judgment, salvation, and how Samson didn't belong to me. When she was gone, I rushed to the cart and unbuckled Samson. I held him so tightly I was shaking. I cried into his hair. "I've got you, sweetie," I whispered. "You're safe." An employee approached cautiously. "Ma'am, are you okay? We're so sorry. We've called the police." I could barely speak. "I just want to go home." They offered to help me pay for my things, but I left the cart behind. Nothing in it mattered. Another employee walked us to the exit. Even though the woman was gone, I couldn't shake the feeling she would reappear, waiting for us outside. But she wasn't. Instead, as we reached the parking lot, police cars pulled in. I saw officers guiding the screaming woman into the back of a cruiser. I buckled Samson into his car seat, kissed his forehead, and whispered, "We're going home, sweetie." I got behind the wheel and cried the entire drive home. Later that night, after Samson was asleep, I finally had time to think. My hands still shook, remembering how fast everything happened. I felt guilty that he didn't get his toy, but the thought of returning to that Walmart turned my stomach. I promised I'd buy it for him soon. "Tomorrow, sweetie," I whispered to his sleeping form. "Mommy will get it tomorrow." The police told me the woman had caused disturbances before, harassing employees, yelling at customers. But this was the first time she'd tried to take someone's child. I still don't understand why she targeted us specifically. Maybe she was mentally ill. Maybe she believed every word she screamed. But none of that matters. What matters is that I listened to my instincts. What matters is that Samson is safe. We shop at a different Walmart now, across town. It's farther, but I don't mind. I hold Samson a little tighter in public places now, and I don't ignore that gut feeling anymore. The one that told me that woman wasn't just loud. She was dangerous, and I'm grateful every day that I reacted when I did. I've been a cashier at Walmart for a little over 2 years, long enough to learn that this place isn't really one store. It's a rotating cast of moods that happen to share a roof. Some days feel like a bus station, loud and impatient. Some days feel like a waiting room, slow and tired. Either way, you come in, you take your lane, and you ride whatever current the store is in. I work the afternoon to late shift, usually starting after lunch and leaving close to closing time. The schedule just fits me. Mornings always felt like I was chasing the day. Overnights made me feel like I was living in someone else's body. Afternoons are steady. You get the big waves of people when school lets out and when jobs let out. Then the store thins, the aisles stretch out quieter, and everything feels a little more echoey. Cashiering isn't hard the way people think hard is. It's hard in the way repetition is hard. It's hard in the way standing still for 8 hours is hard. And most of all, it's hard because you're the last stop for everyone's mood. Someone's day went bad, you feel it. Someone's day went great. You feel that too. You learn to keep your face neutral and your voice even. You learn to answer, "How are you?" the same way whether the person asking is kind or cruel. You learn to let things roll off. I'm used to angry customers, the ones who slam a loyalty card on the counter like I personally invented inflation, the ones who want to argue over a coupon that expired 2 months ago. I'm used to pleasant customers who tell you their grandkids' names while you ring up bananas. I'm used to weird customers who overshare and slightly creepy ones who hover too close and try to turn basic politeness into a conversation that goes somewhere else. Most of those interactions dissolve as soon as the receipt prints. You don't carry them home. You can't. If you did, you'd never sleep. That's why, on the first day he came through my lane, I didn't think anything of it. It was a Wednesday, around 7. The after-work rush had thinned but wasn't gone. My lane was steady, not slammed, and the front end had that usual hum. Carts squeaking, kids whining somewhere behind me, the intercom calling for a manager to Sporting Goods. He stepped into my line without a basket. 3 items in his hand: gum, body wash, socks, quick errand stuff. He looked like he could be mid-30s, clean, plain, the kind of guy you'd see in an office building or a grocery store and forget 2 seconds later. Nothing flashy, nothing that would make you track him with your eyes. He waited patiently. When he got to the belt, he gave me a small nod. "Evening," he said. "Hey." I scanned the gum. "Did you find everything all right?" "Yeah, easy enough." His voice wasn't weird, calm, no edge to it. He didn't try to joke, didn't try to flirt, but he watched me more closely than most customers do, not staring at my chest or my face like some guys do, just watching my hands, my movements, like he was paying attention to the job itself. I noticed that for half a second, then moved on. "You work this shift a lot?" he asked. "I get that question from regulars sometimes. It's not strange on its own." "Most days," I said. He nodded slowly, like that answered something for him. I bagged the socks, handed him the receipt. He took it, said thanks, and left. No lingering. No second look. Just walked out of my lane and into the current of the store. 30 seconds. That was it. By the time the next customer stepped up, he was gone from my head. Thursday evenings are usually a little busier. People are stocking up for the weekend early, or they're tired and cranky from the week piling up. I clocked in, logged into my register, and settled into the routine. A little before 7, he came back. Same calm walk, same straight shot toward my lane even though 2 others were open with shorter lines. He had iced tea and a small pack of batteries this time. Items that felt random, not suspicious, just light. Like he was grabbing things to have a reason to be there. He set them down on the belt. "Evening," I said. "Hey." He still didn't smile much. He still didn't flirt. If anything, he seemed more relaxed than before, like the store and the moment were familiar to him now. It was subtle, but you can feel when someone has decided they belong somewhere. I scanned the items. He watched quietly. When I handed him the receipt, he said, "You weren't here yesterday morning." I blinked. It took a beat to land. "I don't work mornings," I said. "Right." He nodded, almost to himself. "I figured." Then he left. That line sat with me longer than it should have. Not because it was horrifying, just because it didn't match the context. Customers don't usually comment on whether you work the morning shift unless they've looked for you, and I hadn't told him anything about my schedule besides most days. Still, I tried to dismiss it. People say odd things. Maybe he'd been in here earlier and noticed a different cashier at my lane. Maybe he was making conversation in his own stiff way. Later that night, I went on break and saw him again near self-checkout. He wasn't scanning anything. He wasn't holding a drink. He was just standing there, hands in his pockets, looking down the main aisle like he was waiting for someone. When I walked past, he turned his head slightly. Not a greeting, not even a smile. Just a subtle acknowledgement that he'd seen me. I kept walking. I didn't want to feed a conversation I wasn't trying to have. When I came back from break, he was gone. It still didn't feel like a problem. It felt like an awkward regular in the making. Maybe a lonely guy. Maybe someone who liked a familiar face at checkout. I'd seen that before. But there was something about the timing that started to tug at me. The same time 2 days in a row. The way he said, "I figured," like he belonged in the math of my schedule. I didn't dwell on it too hard. I went home, ate dinner, watched something mindless, and tried to let the shift drain out of me. Friday is a different animal. The store is louder, more crowded, more chaotic. By early evening, my lane was stacked with carts full of snacks, soda, freezer meals. People were getting ready to spend money they'd been holding all week. I didn't see him at 7. I didn't see him at all for the first couple hours. A part of me relaxed without me meaning to, like my brain had been waiting for a thing it wasn't admitting it was waiting for. Then, around 6:30, before the evening wave hit its peak, I left my lane to help restock the gum and mints near the front. It's a little filler task they toss you when the line is light. I bent down to slide a fresh box into the bottom shelf, stood up, and saw him in aisle 9. No basket, no cart, no items in his hands. Just standing there. He wasn't directly staring at me, not in a way you could call out. He was facing the shelves, like he was browsing candy, but his posture was too still for someone shopping. And when he felt me look at him, he turned his head just enough to meet my eyes for half a breath. Then he looked away down the aisle like nothing had happened. I felt that small warning spark in my chest. Not fear. More like a quiet, pay attention. I went back to my lane and logged in. The line picked up. I scanned, bagged, nodded. I tried to lock into autopilot. But as the night went on, I kept catching him in the store. First in electronics. He stood near the headphone wall, hands empty, gaze drifting between boxes without settling on any. Then near seasonal, close to the Halloween leftovers and early Christmas shelves. Then later near the grocery coolers, standing in the open space like he was deciding between brands of soda without having any soda in his hands. Each time I noticed him, I told myself I was imagining a pattern. In Walmart, you see the same people more than once all the time. The store is big, but not infinite. People loop around. Still, I couldn't ignore how he never seemed to buy anything unless it was at my register. How he seemed to be waiting for me to look up before he shifted aisles. Near the end of the night, he came through my lane again. He had a small item I don't even remember now. I remember his face more than what he bought. He didn't greet me. He didn't say thanks. He just watched me ring him up in silence, close enough to the counter that I could feel the heat of his presence. His eyes were steady, not angry, not hungry, just fixed, like he was memorizing my movements. When I handed him the receipt, he took it and left without a word. I sat with that silence a lot longer than I wanted to. Friday ended. I walked to my car alone, because at that point there wasn't anything to report. Nothing concrete, just a growing sense of being observed. Saturday shifts are a blur of noise. Families, teenagers, older couples, people killing time. The store is brighter on weekends, not because the lights change, but because the building is fuller. You're surrounded by motion. That afternoon I was running a register near the middle front end. My coworker Marcy was a few lanes down from me, and every now and then one of us would catch the other's eye and make a face about some customer. That's how you stay sane. Silent jokes, tiny human moments. Around 7, my lane slowed. I stepped away for a second to swap out receipt paper and grab bags from the back cabinet. When I turned back toward the front, he was there at the end of the walkway. No cart, no basket. Hands in his pockets, watching. He didn't approach right away. He hovered near the self-checkout side, like he was giving me time to notice him. I looked away and pretended to focus on my lane setup. When I looked again, he was closer. He stepped into my line even though another cashier had waved him over first. She was dealing with a long cart. Her lane was open. He ignored her and moved toward me. While he waited, he stared past the candy racks and gift cards, his gaze angled so that even when he wasn't directly facing me, I knew he was watching. I felt my shoulders go tight. He had a bottle of water and a cheap notebook. I scanned them. He leaned slightly forward, lowering his voice. "You've been busy." "Yeah," I said. I kept it flat, professional. "You looked tired yesterday." I froze for half a breath. It wasn't a compliment. It wasn't a normal observation. It was too specific, too personal. "I work Friday nights," I said, like that explained it. He nodded slowly. "I know." I didn't respond. He watched me bag the notebook, then asked, "What time do you usually get off?" That was the first question that clearly crossed a line. It wasn't the kind of thing a regular asks casually. It wasn't harmless curiosity. I don't really have a set time, I said. Depends on the shift. He held my eyes. But it's late. I didn't answer. I handed him the receipt. He took it, lingered a second, then said quietly, "I'll see you around." He walked away at an unhurried pace. I stood there for a second longer than I should have, staring at the empty space he left behind. I felt Marcy looking over. I forced myself to scan the next customer, smile, keep the line moving. When there was a gap, Marcy came over with a bag rack. She asked softly, "You okay?" "Yeah," I said. I wasn't ready to tell her why my throat felt tight. "Just tired." She nodded like she understood, and maybe she did. Retail tired is a universal language. The rest of the shift, I tried not to look for him. But once you start noticing someone, your brain does it automatically. It keeps checking. It keeps scanning. I saw him twice more that night. Once by the greeting cards, pretending to read them, but not really. Once near the toy aisle, standing still between the shelves like he was waiting for someone to come around a corner. I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. I didn't want to make it into something if it wasn't. But I felt myself shrinking into the front end in a way I hadn't before, staying in my lane longer than I needed, keeping the counter between me and the rest of the store. By Sunday evening, I was already tense before my shift even hit the middle stretch. I hated that. I didn't like walking into work carrying a feeling that belonged to a stranger. The store was quieter than Saturday, but not empty. The weekend had worn people out. The aisles had that soft tiredness that comes after 2 full days of shopping. I spent the first part of the shift on autopilot, trying to reset myself, trying to be normal. My lane was steady. I joked lightly with a kid counting pennies. I helped an older man figure out how to use his phone wallet. I smiled at a couple who bought birthday candles and balloons. I was trying to prove to myself that I could keep doing my job the way I always had. Around 8, the front end thinned. I was asked to restock candy near self-checkout because the shelves looked messy. Nothing complicated, just a little cleanup work. I wheeled a small cart over, crouched down, started lining up bags of chocolate in the bottom row. The store noise faded into a low hum. Somewhere far off, a kid was laughing, then crying. A cart squeaked past the aisle mouth, then footsteps behind me. Not passing, stopping. I stood up slowly, already knowing. He was there. He positioned himself at an angle that blocked one end of the aisle. Not close enough to be obvious, but close enough that I'd have to pass him to leave. His hands were in his pockets. His face was calm, like he was about to ask where to find cereal. "You've been avoiding me," he said. I felt my heart punch once. I kept my voice steady. "I'm working. I move around. You walk away whenever I'm near your lane. I walk all over the store. That's part of my job." He looked at me like he was listening carefully, like he was weighing whether my words were true. "You talk to everyone else," he said. "Not me." "Because I don't know you," I said. I was surprised I said it that plainly. His expression didn't change. "We've talked." "Not like that." He took a small step closer. Not a lunge, not aggressive, just a tightening of space. "I'm not trying to make you uncomfortable," he said. His tone stayed calm, almost patient. "I'm just saying when someone notices you, really notices you, you should acknowledge it. It's rude to pretend you don't feel it." The way he said it, like I owed him something, made my skin feel too tight. I glanced past him toward the aisle mouth. The front end looked empty. For a few seconds, nothing moved. "You need to let me go back to my lane," I said. He didn't move right away. He just watched me. His calm didn't feel calming. It felt decided. Then, finally, a younger employee rolled a clearance cart into view at the end of the aisle. Not coming toward us, just existing nearby. The man stepped back immediately. I walked past him without looking back. I didn't rush. I didn't run. I kept my pace even because I didn't want him to know how hard my heart was pounding. I made it to my register and lasted maybe 10 minutes before my hands started shaking. I scanned items wrong. I had to type in a price twice because my fingers were stiff. When there was a gap, I turned on my lane light and walked straight to the front office. My manager was inside with an assistant lead. He looked up when I knocked. "I need to talk to you," I said. "Right now." He stepped into the hall with me. I told him everything, the first night, the second, the way he commented on my schedule, the way he kept appearing without shopping, the questions about when I got off, the aisle. I wasn't crying. I wasn't hysterical. I just needed someone to hear it while it was still clear in my head. He listened without interrupting. "Can you identify him on camera?" he asked. Yes. He pulled up the footage. Even grainy, it was obvious. His drifting, his stillness near self-checkout, the way he kept circling back toward the front end. My manager's face tightened in a way that told me he'd seen this before. "You did the right thing coming to me," he said. "You're not overreacting. If he comes back in tonight, we'll handle it. If he approaches you again, you page me or AP immediately. We trespass him. If he waits outside, we call police." The seriousness in his voice made my stomach drop. Not because it surprised me, but because it confirmed what I'd been trying not to name all week. I went back to my lane. I kept looking down the walkway. I didn't see him again that night. When I clocked out, Asset Protection walked me to my car. The store doors hissed open, and the cold air outside hit my face like a reset. The parking lot was mostly empty. The lights made bright circles on the asphalt and left everything between them darker than it should have been. My car felt far away, even though it wasn't. We walked quietly. I kept scanning the shadows between cars, checking behind us without meaning to. "See anyone?" AP asked. "No," I said, "but I keep thinking I will." He nodded like he understood. We reached my car. I unlocked it, got in, locked the doors immediately. AP waited until my headlights came on, then walked back toward the store. I sat there for a moment with my hands on the wheel, breathing slowly, watching the lot. Nothing moved. The drive home felt longer. Every set of headlights behind me looked suspicious even when they weren't. I didn't turn on the radio. I wanted to hear the road. I wanted to hear if something changed. When I got home, I locked my door and stood in the quiet for a few seconds before turning on any lights. It wasn't dramatic fear that stuck with me. It was quieter, a shift in how my body understood space. Because you can work somewhere for years. You can know every aisle, every routine, every sound. You can think you've seen every type of customer that exists. And then a stranger decides you're part of his story. He doesn't have to yell. He doesn't have to touch you. He doesn't even have to say anything overtly threatening. He just has to keep showing up, keep watching, keep tightening the world around you until you start living inside his attention. And once that happens, it's hard to go back to pretending the store is just a store. I moved back in with my sister 2 months ago. I didn't plan on it. I'd been on overnight at a warehouse for a little over a year, and it was steady until summer. Then management started doing what they called hour adjustments. First, they cut us to 3 nights a week. Then 2. Then people were checking the schedule board like it was a lottery, hoping their name was still on it. Mine wasn't. The timing couldn't have been worse. My lease renewed in the same stretch. My roommates left, the rent jumped, and I couldn't carry it alone. I tried anyway. I picked up small jobs, landscaping, late-night deliveries, hauling junk for a neighbor who paid cash. It covered food, gas, and not much else. I watched my savings drain in slow motion and told myself I'd catch a break before it hit zero. My sister saw what I was doing. She said I could take her spare room. Her apartment's small, and she works early mornings, but she didn't hesitate. I did. I hated the idea of crawling back into family space at 22 like I was 12 again. But pride doesn't buy rent. So I moved in, told her it would be temporary, and tried not to think about what temporary meant if I didn't land something fast. That's when I started applying to anything with overnight hours: grocery stores, distribution centers, stocking jobs, anything where I didn't have to fake daytime energy or talk to customers for 8 straight hours. Walmart was one of the first applications I sent. I'd shopped there enough to know the layout, and overnight pay was better than most places that would hire me quickly. They called back a week later. Overnight stalker, predictable hours, slight shift premium, no customer interaction. I accepted before the recruiter finished the sentence. My first shift was a Sunday night. My sister dropped me off a few minutes before midnight. We didn't talk much during the drive, not in a hostile way, just the quiet that happens when you're both pretending the situation is normal. At the curb, she told me to text her when I got inside, then waited until I shut the door before driving off. The parking lot was almost empty, a few cars scattered under the far lights, the rest dark and wide open. The building looked less like a store and more like a slab of light sitting in the middle of nowhere. At midnight, Walmart doesn't feel like a place people shop. It feels like a place that's supposed to be empty. I checked my phone. 11:57 p.m. The automatic doors hesitated when I walked up. I slowed down, thinking maybe I wasn't close enough to trigger them. They shuddered once, like something on the tracks caught, then slid open with a slow drag. The air inside was cool and dry in that way big stores always are, but the lights were harsher than I expected. The aisles looked washed out, like the color had been turned down. There was no music, no low chatter, no cartwheels. Just the steady hum of fluorescent bulbs and a faint mechanical whir from somewhere deep in the building. A greeter stood near the entrance in a yellow vest. He wasn't leaning or checking receipts or staring at his phone. He was just standing there facing forward, unmoving. "Evening," I said out of habit. He didn't respond, didn't blink. His eyes didn't track me. They stayed fixed on a point past my shoulder like I wasn't there. I passed him and headed toward the employee doors. The front end looked abandoned, registers dark, self-checkout screens asleep. The kind of quiet you get in a store after closing, except this was still technically open. As I walked through the main aisle, I saw workers spaced out in different departments. One near toys, one at the edge of home goods, another by electronics. Blue vests, badges, hands at their sides. None of them were stalking. None of them were talking. They were just standing. I told myself they were waiting for the shift huddle. Maybe they were listening to an earpiece. Maybe they were on break. But the way they stood felt too exact, too placed, like someone had arranged them there and told them not to move. When I got close to the employee doors, one worker in electronics turned their head slightly toward me. Not the body, just the head. Slow and smooth, like a motor easing into a new position. Their face stayed blank. I pushed through the doors faster than I meant to. The break room felt like a different building. A soda machine hummed. A microwave clock blinked the wrong time. A half-empty bag of chips sat on a chair. A man in his 30s sat at the table with a handheld scanner, leaning forward like his back hurt. "You the new hire?" he asked. "Yeah, Kurt." He nodded. "Miguel, punch in." I clocked in at midnight. He looked me over in that tired, practical way leads do when they're deciding if you're going to make their night easier. "You done overnight before?" "Warehouse," I said, "used to pallets and stocking." "Good, less explaining." He stood, grabbed another handheld, and motioned me out. "We're light tonight. It'll be you, me, and the rest of the crew." He paused before crew, like he wasn't sure how much he wanted to say. He walked me to seasonal, pointed at a pallet of holiday stuff, and handed me a fresh box cutter. "Start here. Unbox face, keep it clean. Easy aisle." "All right." He took a step away, then looked back. "If something feels off," he said quietly, "don't overthink it. Just keep working." Then he left before I could ask what that meant. Seasonal was quiet enough that I could hear my own breath. I cut open the first box and started stocking. Lights, ornaments, plastic wreaths, the usual early season flood. The routine was familiar. Cut tape, sort, product, shelf, repeat. I tried to let the rhythm settle my nerves. It didn't. After 5 minutes, I realized I still hadn't heard a single cartwheel. No thumps, no voices, no background noise from other workers. just humming lights and a distant floor buffer that hit a wall, beeped, and went quiet again. A small item slipped from my hand and bounced on the tile with a sharp clatter. At the far end of the aisle, 3 workers turned their heads toward me at the exact same time. Their bodies didn't shift. Arms stayed at their sides. Only their heads rotated in sync. Their eyes were open but unfocused, like they weren't really looking at me so much as pointing in my direction. My stomach tightened. I crouched, picked the item up, and forced myself to keep stalking. When I glanced again, they were gone. No footsteps, no sound. Empty walkway. A rhythmic clicking started a few aisles over. Box cutters snapping open and shut. I stepped to the aisle end and looked. 2 workers were resetting shelves like mirrored footage. Same bend at the waist, same arm lift, same placement of items. They didn't glance at each other. They didn't speak. Their movements matched too perfectly for real people. I went back to my pallet and worked faster, not because the job demanded it, but because I wanted something to do with my hands. 10 minutes later, real footsteps approached. Miguel. "Not bad for your first night," he said, looking my shelves over. "Most people drag." "Thanks." He didn't smile. He checked both ends of the aisle first, then lowered his voice. "You seen the crew yet?" "I've seen people standing around," I said carefully. "They're quiet." "They keep to themselves," he said. The words were casual, but the way he scanned the aisle wasn't. He kept looking past me like he expected someone to appear. "Did any of them talk to you?" "No." "Good." That one word did more to spike my heartbeat than anything else. Miguel leaned closer. "If the intercom goes off," he said, "don't freeze. Doesn't matter what it says. Keep walking." "Why would I freeze?" "Because that's what they do." "Who?" He nodded toward the aisles. "The ones that have been here a while." "What am I listening for?" His eyes met mine. "If you hear the call for code sleep, pretend you didn't." "Code sleep?" "Just keep moving," he said, "no matter what." He straightened like the conversation was over. "Finish this aisle. Meet me in toys." He walked off. 2 workers passed behind him in synchronized steps. Their shoes made almost no sound. Both turned their heads toward me as they went, then continued on without interruption. At 2:08 a.m. the store changed. It wasn't dramatic. No flicker, no announcement. Just a soft mechanical click overhead, like a relay switching, and the fluorescent hum shifted to a higher pitch. The air felt colder, not by temperature, but by texture, like the building had tightened around itself. Workers began appearing in new aisles without sound. One moment the walkway was empty. The next there were blue vests positioned at aisle mouths. Their posture was stiff and exact. A worker stepped into my aisle. He didn't glance at me. He walked past like I was furniture, opened a box, and started stocking with precise, repeating motions. Another worker in the next aisle mirrored him almost perfectly. Then the intercom crackled. Not a normal chime. Static, harsh and tearing, like an old speaker being forced to life. "Associates, code S dash dash." The voice cut out mid-word. Every worker froze instantly, arms held mid-air, boxes suspended, heads tilted, no blinking, no shifting weight. It was like time snapped off for them. Miguel's warning came back so hard I felt it in my chest. "Don't freeze." I forced my hands to move. Tape, box, shelf. My fingers felt numb, but I kept going. I stared at the labels and pretended this was normal. A faint fabric scrape came from behind me. I turned a fraction. The nearest worker's head had rotated toward me, torso still frozen, eyes blank, glassy, not focusing but aimed in my direction. Across the aisles I heard tiny adjustments, a shoulder rolling back, a neck straightening, the soft creak of fabric as bodies corrected their posture without walking. Then all at once, they reset. Posture snapped upright, arms fell to neutral, heads aligned, and they started walking, toward me. Slow, synchronized, silent steps. A hand grabbed my shoulder from behind. I spun around with the box cutter half raised. Miguel. "Don't look at them," he whispered. "Move." He pulled me out of the aisle. The crew turned their heads in a slow wave, tracking our direction. He ducked us behind a tall shelf of storage bins. "They're in reset mode," he said. "You don't want to be visible when they're like this." "What are they?" I whispered. Miguel kept his eyes on the aisle end. They used to be workers. Then something happened. First one stopped acting right, stood still for hours, worked too fast, didn't talk. Management thought he was on something, sent him home. Next night he came back anyway. Then another did it, then two more. He swallowed, jaw tight. By the time anyone took it seriously, the crew was bigger than the human staff. What did management do? They stopped coming in overnight, said it wasn't safe, then they just left the shift to run itself. The intercom clicked softly overhead like it was about to speak again. "Has anyone reported it?" I asked. Miguel gave a tired exhale. People tried. The store kept hiring replacements instead of fixing anything. New hires would quit, or transfer, or... He trailed off and then shook his head. "If you don't see them leave, you don't ask why." "What about the intercom voice?" "No one's in that booth," he said. "Whatever talks on there isn't one of us." "Does it always start like that?" "Static, clipped words," Miguel said. "Sometimes it completes the call, sometimes it doesn't. But code sleep is the one that matters. That's when they freeze, reset, and start looking for movement." "Looking for movement like us," he said. His face tightened in a way that felt personal. "My brother was one of the first to change. I keep coming on nights hoping he'll do something human again. He never does." A deeper mechanical click vibrated through the floor. Miguel stiffened. "Phase 2. We go now." We stepped into the main aisle. Workers lined it like pillars, evenly spaced, facing forward. As we moved, their heads rotated in sync, tracking us. Miguel kept us at a steady pace. "Stay on my left." Halfway down, a worker stepped into our path. Tall, rigid, blank-faced. Miguel didn't slow. "This one moves when you move," he murmured. We walked straight at it. At 2 feet, its head tilted slightly. At 1 foot, it slid aside in a single clean motion. But another worker stepped out ahead, faster than the last. It wasn't blocking out of confusion. It was predicting our route. Miguel pulled me into a side aisle. "They're adapting," he whispered. "Keep your pace." We cut through toys. A line of workers appeared at the far ends of aisles like gates closing. Their heads kept turning in a slow, coordinated wave as we changed direction. One rounded a corner so smoothly it didn't look like a step. More like gliding into position. Its arm lifted slightly, then lowered, like it was testing how to grab without breaking its pattern. Miguel kept moving. We hit household goods, then crafts. The crew shifted around us. Every time we changed aisles, workers in the adjacent rows rotated and repositioned to mirror the distance we'd traveled. Not chasing, correcting. We reached the final aisle toward garden. The door was visible, a straight run, maybe 70 feet. Behind us, soft synchronized footsteps began filling the aisles. Still quiet, but faster. They were closing the gap. "Go," Miguel said. We moved quicker, not running yet, but close. A worker stepped out directly ahead. Too close. Its hand rose higher than the others had. Fingers spread slightly. Miguel yanked me back hard, then shoved me around it. The worker didn't lunge. It just adjusted its position in a fraction of a second to stay aligned with our movement, like it was trying to find the correct angle to intercept. "Don't stop," Miguel said. "They respond to stillness." We pushed forward. Another worker appeared at the aisle end behind us, then another. Their heads aligned, eyes blank, posture tightening. Miguel hit the crash bar on the garden door. It resisted for a heartbeat, then opened. Cold night air hit my face. "Go," he said. "You're coming too." "I can't," he said, and his voice wasn't scared. It was decided. They know me. They've learned me. They've seen me now. Not like they've seen me. The workers were almost at the aisle entrance, filling the space in a wall of blue vests. Miguel pushed me outside. "Don't look back. Keep walking." "Miguel, this shift ends for you," he said quietly. "Not for me." The door shut between us. I backed into the parking lot. breathing hard, and saw silhouettes pressed to the glass, motionless, staring out like mannequins waiting for a cue I couldn't hear. Miguel's outline stood behind them, swallowed by aisle light. I turned and ran until the store was far behind me. My sister picked me up minutes later. She took one look at me and locked the doors as soon as I got in. I didn't explain much on the ride home. I couldn't make it sound real without feeling stupid, and I didn't want her looking at me like I'd snapped. The next morning, I called HR. They told me there were no overnight managers on record, no intercom logs for the previous night. The woman sounded distracted, like she was reading from a script and trying to get to the next call. After I hung up, I checked Walmart's job listings. The same overnight stalker position was already posted again. Immediate start, no experience required, no closing date. I won't go back. But sometimes, late at night, I see the store's glow from a distance. It looks ordinary from the road. Bright, quiet, safe. And I wonder how many new hires walked in after me. How many never walked out. How many stepped into the pattern and didn't recognize it until it was too late. Because whatever those workers became, they aren't stocking shelves anymore. They're waiting. I was in the garden center doing the last stretch of zoning for the night when it happened. I'd been working at Walmart for a little over a year, long enough to recognize every crooked price tag and every bag of potting soil someone had sliced open out of boredom. We were maybe 40 minutes from closing, and the store had that late shift hum to it, a constant low vibration from the ventilation, the lights, the refrigerators in grocery. Customers were thinning out. A few still wandered in seasonal, but the rest of the store felt emptied out. Inventory had been a mess the past few weeks. Management kept complaining about missing camping lanterns, socks, protein bars, even a couple boxes of instant soup that vanished right after a truck delivery. They kept blaming theft, but it wasn't the usual pattern. Things were disappearing in clusters, stuff a person could live off, not random impulse grabs. I was just trying to finish fast enough to not get asked to stay late again when I noticed a pallet of potting soil wasn't where I left it. It wasn't a minor shift either. Someone had pushed the whole thing back at least a foot. I frowned and walked closer. We'd had kids mess around with displays before, but those were always loud, sloppy messes. Candy wrappers, toys abandoned in weird spots, footprints on shelves. This felt different. Controlled. Up close, I saw a torn piece of cardboard sticking out from behind the pallet. Not from the stock, but from a larger box. An empty water bottle lay beside it, label peeling, sides dented and dirty like it had been handled a lot. And then there was the smell, faint but human, sweat mixed with that sour trace you get in closed-up spaces. I crouched down and leaned in. The space behind the racks was dim, just a dull glow from the overheads. Something metal clattered deeper inside. Soft, but intentional. I hesitated. Last week, I'd gotten chewed out for overreacting to a small situation in grocery, so I figured I'd check before making it a whole thing. I moved the pallet just enough to slip into the narrow gap behind it. The space was tighter than I expected. I had to turn sideways and step over flattened cardboard spread out like a makeshift floor. The smell got stronger. Not filthy, not rotting, just someone living too close to their own air. The first thing I saw was a sleeping bag. Not one from our shelves, but it was surrounded by things that were. A stack of fleece throws, still half-wrapped in plastic. Empty bottles of our store-brand water. Dented cans of soup opened with something sharp. A camping lantern, one of the models we were missing, leaned against the wall with dead batteries scattered beside it. My stomach dropped. Someone had been back here longer than a night. There was a bucket shoved into a corner with a towel thrown over it, and next to it a mess of receipts covered in circles and arrows. A spiral notebook lay open on the cardboard floor, full of uneven handwriting. Times of day, short notes, directions I couldn't understand. The missing socks, the lanterns, the protein bars. All of it made sense now. I backed up a step, trying not to make noise. That's when I heard footsteps outside the gap. Soft, dragging. Someone squeezed through the opening before I could move. He saw me immediately. The guy looked late 50s, maybe younger, but worn down. Layers on layers of clothes. 2 jackets, a faded hoodie, a scarf that looked cut from a blanket. His beard was patchy, sunburnt around the edges. He held a long piece of rebar in one hand, low like a walking stick. He froze when he registered me. Not angry, not shocked, but already halfway through a panic. "You shouldn't be back here," he said quietly. His voice was hoarse and tired. "They flag anything that moves." I lifted my hand slightly to show I wasn't a threat. "I work here. I didn't know someone was staying." "You need to keep your voice low." He shifted sideways, just enough to block the exit. "If they hear movement, they track it." "Who's they?" I asked. He rubbed the side of his face, eyes darting between me and the space behind me. "There are cameras, not the obvious ones, the little ones. They watch heat and patterns. They see when something changes." He wasn't ranting or yelling. He sounded scared. Really scared. "I'm not here to take anything or get you in trouble," I said. "I just want to step out of here." "That's not safe right now." His grip tightened on the rebar. "If you walk out fast, they'll think you're trying to run. They rush people who run." His breathing got louder in the cramped space. I glanced at the gap again. Too small for me to slip past him without brushing his arm or the rebar. I had no idea how he'd react to that. "I'm just going to get some water," I tried. "No calls? No radio? I'll come back." He shook his head instantly. "No. They hear radios. That's one of the things they monitor." The automatic lights in the garden center shut off just then, standard motion sensors, dropping everything into a dim outline lit by the front aisles. He flinched so hard he nearly hit the shelves with his shoulder. "They're checking the floor," he whispered. "Don't move until it comes back on." He wasn't threatening me. He genuinely believed it. And if I stayed there any longer, I'd be waiting on his fear, not reality. I needed to leave before he decided I was part of whatever danger he saw. The lights clicked on a few seconds later. He didn't relax. I edged a little toward the far end of the shelving. "I'm not leaving you," I said. "I'm just stepping out for a second." He looked at the opening, then back at me. "Not yet. You move wrong and they'll follow the wrong signal." My chest tightened. My options were shrinking. I took a slow step back, then another, angling toward the emergency exit at the far end of Garden Center. If I hit it, the alarm would do the talking for me. "I'm not leaving," he murmured again, almost to himself. "I can't go back out there." "I understand," I said. "I'm just—" I turned and ran. He shouted something behind me. I couldn't make out what, but I didn't stop. The emergency bar hit my shoulder as I slammed into it. The alarm exploded through the quiet, echoing off the garden fencing and the metal racks. Cold night air rushed in. He stayed at the threshold, covering his face like the parking lot lights were too bright. Within seconds, I heard pounding footsteps, 2 security associates sprinting from the other end of the store. One stopped beside me, asking if I was hurt. The other kept about 15 feet back from the man. "Sir, stay where you are," she said, steady but firm. "You're not in trouble. Just don't move." He shook his head and backed deeper into the shadows. "I'm not going back out there," he said, voice cracking. "Don't make me go back outside." My manager arrived a minute later, out of breath and already rubbing their temples. The look on their face wasn't shock, more like confirmation. They asked me what I saw. I told them everything. Security didn't rush him. They kept distance, kept their hands visible, waited. The man kept repeating the same thing over and over, that he couldn't go outside, not yet, not until it was safe. It took a while, but eventually the paramedics got there. They approached slow, talking to him the whole time. He let them guide him toward the exit only when he saw the stretcher. He clung to that piece of rebar the whole walk, like if he let it go, he'd fall apart. The ambulance left with its lights on but siren off. When the doors closed, my manager let out a long exhale. "We figured it was something like this," they said. "We've been missing too much inventory. Someone was slipping into garden through the fenced side. Guess we know who." The rest of the cleanup happened without much talking. Security taped off the area behind the racks, and management started pulling out the makeshift shelter. Blankets, food wrappers, flashlight batteries, the notebook full of scribbles. When I walked back inside, the metal racks were still shifted. The narrow space behind them looked darker now that I knew what had been hiding there. I'd walked past that spot every shift for weeks. The idea that he'd been inches away the whole time sat heavier than anything that happened afterward.